Welcome to Adventures in Life. I'm Earl Beecher, your host. Our guest is the Right Reverend Alexi Smith, and he tells me he is the Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs Director for the Los Angeles Archdiocese.
Correct.
What does ecumenical mean?
Ecumenical comes from a Greek word. It means surfacing those things we have in common. That title means that I direct our church's relations ecumenically, meaning with our fellow Christians, and interreligiously, meaning with non-Christian faiths.
With non-Christian faiths?
Correct.
Muslims?
Muslims,
Buddhists?
Jews, Hindus, Buddhists, Sikhs, Baha'is, Zoroastrians.
Okay, interreligious affairs. How do you connect with all of these groups? What is it that you do?
The Archdiocese has a long history here of having both formal dialogues, theological dialogues with these other faiths, and also of working together with them for the betterment of our community.
In other words, if there's a community project comes up, you get the group together.
Absolutely. Or a community crisis, such
Okay.
as sometimes building problems, where communities don't want a particular faith to build a house of worship in their community.
Yes, I was working with a group that got into that when they wanted to put a Muslim temple in Garden Grove.
Exactly.
And the other churches joined in, and they were able to do that.
We recently did that to assist a group of Buddhist nuns to help them build a temple in a certain community.
You know, I like it when the churches work together.
Absolutely.
And since you're the officer for that, I'm preaching to the choir when I say I like it, because obviously, what are some examples of some of the other things that you've done recently?
We, through the Interreligious Council, which I chair for here in Southern California, we've done a seminar on domestic violence, something that unfortunately plagues all of our faiths. I mentioned that we assisted in building. We have supported one another through conflicts in the community, working with the police department, things of that nature.
So that I think the churches can contribute a great deal in getting people thinking about working together.
Absolutely.
Now, your background intrigues me, because you said that you came from the Greek Catholic.
I'm a Greek Catholic, yes. Most people think of Catholics as with the title Roman Catholic.
Yes.
I'm a bit unique in that I'm Greek Catholic. Has nothing to do with ethnicity. Has to do with the fact that the Catholic Church actually breathes with two lungs, a Latin or Roman lung and an Eastern or Greek lung. I am of that Greek lung.
But you're working with the Archdiocese of Los Angeles, which is Roman Catholic.
We are fully Catholic, but
so it's integrated.
Integrated, yes.
Well, now, isn't there another branch, the Greek Orthodox?
Correct. We would be that portion of the Orthodox churches, be they Greek, Russian, or whatever, which, although we retain that spirituality and that mode of worship, we are nonetheless Catholic because we have come into union with Rome.
Now, I know of one very beautiful, I think it was a Greek Orthodox cathedral, St. Sophia's.
Beautiful place.
On
yes.
Normandy.
Mm-hmm.
Is that not part of your group? It's
no,
the other group, or it is your
Orthodox.
group?
No, they would be Greek Orthodox. We are Greek Catholic.
I never really realized there was a difference.
And most Roman Catholics don't even know that we exist. Our late Holy Father, John Paul II, actually brought us to the limelight, in a sense, when he wrote a letter called The Light of the East, and tried to tell people that the Church must breathe with both lungs, its Eastern lung and its Western lung.
Did he use that phraseology?
Correct.
How creative.
Very creative.
Very creative. Of course, you just mentioned Pope John Paul, and that's one of the main reasons why we got together to do the show today. I want to talk to you about him. I think he was universally loved.
I cannot tell you how many times with his passing people have come to me, people of non-Catholic faiths, all claiming him to be their Pope. I was with a group of Jewish people, a group of Muslim people recently. They all came to me to extend their condolences upon the Pope's passing, and all said he was our Pope.
What special qualities did he have that made this happen, this universal acceptance and so
I
forth?
think several. I think his willingness to accept people of diverse faiths, his love of people, the fact that he gathered, for example, representatives of the world's religions 2 or 3 times in the Vatican to pray for world peace.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
spoke volumes. I think of his attempts and efforts at correcting wrongs within the Church that affected other religions, most especially our Jewish brothers and sisters.
Yes, I know he spoke out strongly.
Exactly that, apologizing for past wrongs that we've done. I think that endeared him to these various...
Well, he lived through World War II in Poland,
Absolutely.
which says mountains right there.
Exactly.
And I can see why he would have the caring
Mm-hmm.
for the Jews and the suffering that they had been through in that period
Mm-hmm.
of time, and reaching out. Now, this endeared him to, I think his background shaped him in a way that he was a universal man.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And at the same time, no one ever questioned what he stood for. You always knew that he was Catholic.
Yes.
You always knew what he stood for. But at the same time, he accepted everyone and talked with everyone. On these many pastoral visits he made around the world, in various cities of the world, he always included, as he did when he was here in Los Angeles in 1987, a time when he could meet with our ecumenical and interreligious partners. And he would talk with them.
The representatives of the other
various
churches that
religions.
you're working with.
Exactly. And representatives of non-Christian religions.
Well,
At the same time, he always met with these people to show that we are interested in servicing those areas of commonality and working together for the betterment of society.
I want to get into a discussion of the new Pope, but before we do, I'd like to spend this segment, when you're working with the inter-church group that you head up for this area.
Correct?
They have officers of all of the other churches, or most of them anyway,
Correct.
who are working with you.
Correct.
I've heard you mention several, but I didn't hear you mention some of the Protestant churches. Are they, like, Baptist, Methodists, and so forth, are they joining in, or are they the last to join, as the expression goes?
It depends, honestly, it depends. We, in the ecumenical world, most churches are represented on the Southern California Ecumenical Council. Including Baptists and evangelicals and
Okay.
such. The Catholic Archdiocese here has theological dialogues with certain groups. We have a wonderful rapport with the Lutheran Church, Evangelical Lutheran Church, and the Episcopal Church here. We have a covenant with them, actually. We have a formal dialogue.
What do you mean we have
an
a
agreement?
covenant?
An agreement that we have
Written or?
written, certain shared beliefs and certain shared commitments to pray for one another by name.
Wonderful.
To try to work to share facilities, to share programs, to work for that day where we might be able to share communion together. That type of an agreement.
That type of thing.
Needs a lot of work, needs a lot of infleshing on a parish level. I mean, it's one thing to have agreements on archdiocesan and diocesan levels, but it needs to be, there has to be a filter down to our local congregations.
Well, I should think that you would have a tighter connection to begin with the more liturgical type
Correct.
churches.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And then the others will,
right.
But they represent such a major portion of the population that the natural thing is to reach out and bring everybody together for the common good.
We have used our new cathedral, our Cathedral of Our Lady of the Angels.
I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's gorgeous.
You have to let me bring you there, and I'd be delighted to show you around personally.
Oh.
There is the cornerstone, quotes the prophet Isaiah, and the phrase there is, "My house shall be a house of prayer for all peoples," not just Catholics, for all peoples.
Excellent.
And we do that there. We bring people of all different faiths together to pray and to work together.
That sounds ideal. And Isaiah, you've got somebody who is not New Testament in
Exactly.
case somebody
Exactly.
else doesn't like
Exactly.
it. That's a very, very good idea. That's a nice approach.
Yes, thank you.
Now, you have been doing this for how long?
About 5 years now.
And before that?
For that, I was a pastor. I still am a pastor. I still have a church where I serve as pastor, but I have now the added responsibility of doing this type of work.
Where is your church?
In a place called El Segundo.
Oh, everybody knows where El Segundo is. So you're just down the road
Down
a
the
little
road
ways
for us,
from
yeah,
here
right.
in Santa Monica.
Correct.
Yes. And you've been doing that for?
I was appointed pastor there in '87.
So you've been at it
for
for almost 20 years.
Almost 20 years now. Yeah.
Excellent. What, you work closely with Cardinal Mahoney, I would imagine.
Correct.
Give us sort of an insight into this man.
The Cardinal is a fascinating individual. He certainly knows what he wants, but at the same time, at least with me, he's had kind of a hands-off policy. He's given me this responsibility and trusted it to me. He doesn't micromanage.
Okay, he's
Not
not
like that.
second-guessing you every step
Exactly.
of the way.
Yeah.
I'm a business major,
nor is he,
I know.
nor is he looming over me at every moment, which is
No.
which I appreciate.
But you have access to him readily
Exactly.
in case you need something.
Exactly.
They tell me it's time to pause for a public service announcement, so we'll do that.
do it.
Then we'll talk about the new Pope, if you will. So stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Our guest is Right Reverend Alexei Smith, the Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs Officer with the Los Angeles Archdiocese.
Very good. It's a difficult title to
Oh, it's nice and
My
big.
business cards are huge.
They can't put it all on the character generator on the screen. Anyway, I wanted to ask you, Cardinal Mahoney participated in the voting for the new Pope.
Yes.
How many cardinals vote?
Any cardinal is eligible to vote who has not attained the age of 80. Currently, there are 117 cardinals under the age of 80. Which
How many cardinals are there altogether? Do
I
you
believe
know?
about 160
So there's a few,
who have.
few of us older guys around.
I'm not saying you're 80 years old.
No, I'm not either, but I'm getting there. Anyway.
In the recent election we had, the recent conclave, 2 of those cardinals who were under 80 were ill and not able to come. So it meant 115 actually voted for the Pope. There could have been 117.
What is is there an age limit on cardinals? I mean, how early in life could a person achieve that?
Oh no, it could be any age.
Any age.
Any age.
There's no prescribed.
No, in practice, however, it's usually an honor bestowed upon a priest or bishop later in life, not necessarily earlier in life.
At least 40.
Oh, beyond that, probably 50.
50 or 60.
Right.
So, how does it work, the election of the Pope?
The cardinals, they certainly gather together for the funeral of the previous Pope. Then there are 9 days of official mourning. And during that 9 days, the cardinals, what we term the College of Cardinals or the group of cardinals,
Yes.
Meets together every day, and they are the ones who are actually governing the church at that time. And at that time, they're brought up to date on the current status of the church throughout the world. Then, at the end of the
Membership, finances, properties,
problems, such as that.
I see.
You are a businessman. Then, after those 9 days of mourning, there is what we term a mass or a service, invoking the Holy Spirit to come and inspire these men as to for whom they should vote. They are then sequestered in the Sistine Chapel, where the actual voting takes place.
Do they go through nominations and seconds and all of Robert's Rules of Order?
I don't think Robert's Rules of Order takes place there.
No.
It's all very secretive. They are sworn to secrecy, so that Cardinal Mahoney, for example, will not be telling me for whom he voted, nor will he be describing in detail the process of voting.
Is a simple majority all that's necessary?
2/3 majority.
2/3 majority.
Right. And then, if someone is not elected after a certain number of votes, then they can opt for the simple majority. In this case, they didn't need to opt for that because the election was rather quick.
I think the news reported it was surprisingly quick.
Very quick. Which shows that, in my opinion, that the Cardinals went in there with a consensus that they wished to continue the momentum and policies set for us by the previous Pope, John Paul II.
And they figured that the present Pope Benedict would be the one who would
They
follow.
apparently thought that he would be the one that would best continue that trend in the papacy.
Tell us a little bit about him, his personality, where he came from, and what you expect from him.
I don't know the man. I don't know the man personally. He's a German.
Yes.
The second actual German
Well,
Pope.
he's old enough. He went through World War II, too.
Exactly, yes. He actually served for briefly, I believe, in the German army.
Okay.
Also was a member of the Hitler Youth, apparently, when it was mandatory for every youth.
Well, if you're German, you're German.
Exactly. Certainly has, and the Jewish organizations have been quite clear about saying this. That doesn't mean that he's a Nazi or has any anti-Semitic type of thoughts. Just
Well, if he is the one that they expected to continue John Paul's
they
policies,
wouldn't have elected someone that would exactly. Because
No.
John Paul was certainly
no, not.
not an anti-Semite.
No.
The then Cardinal Ratzinger served for some 21 years as what in the business world you would say chair of that part of the Vatican that deals with doctrine. In other words, he was the one that was to maintain that proper Catholic doctrine was being taught by our priests, by our professors and such.
With an organization that large, it's easy if people start expressing their own opinions for things to get out of control.
Exactly. So he was the control man. He was the control man. And he had that public image, perhaps, or that preconceived notion on our part of someone who was very tough, very law and order type of individual. I believe that we'll find that he's quite different. And I think images of that have come out in just a few days since his election.
If I'm hearing this, he played a certain role, and he did it.
And he did it very well.
Once he is released from that role, he becomes himself, and he'll be quite a bit different.
I think he will bring to the papacy, the position of Pope, that same intensity that he had at the office that he served previously. But I think that he will realize that his role is different now. His role is as pastor, universal pastor, if you will. And as such, he will bring a vibrancy and a warmth that perhaps we haven't seen much of exhibited from him as the head of that previous congregation.
Well, that wasn't his calling before.
But it wasn't his role. It wasn't his role.
Right.
I mean, we saw glimpses of that in the first Mass that he said with the Cardinals after his election, and certainly in the formal installation of him as Pope last Sunday, when he was reaching out to people, he was touching people, he was waving to people, you know,
And smiling.
and smiling.
Approachable.
Yes, very approachable. I'm told, you mentioned Cardinal Mahoney a few moments ago,
Yes.
that the day of his election, the Cardinals had gathered for breakfast in the facility where they were staying there, and certain Cardinals were gathered together. Cardinal Mahoney actually had breakfast, was one of the Cardinals that met with Cardinal Ratzinger at that time and had breakfast together, and Cardinal Ratzinger was full of questions about how are things in Los Angeles and what's going on in your diocese and things like this. A very kind of intimacy that we would not have, that type of public image would not have been projected from his former role. And now I think it will be quite different.
Well, that sounds very exciting. There are a lot of issues that I'd kind of like to explore.
Sure.
What do you expect will be the attitude towards, say, marriage of the priests, or any of these other issues that are common around? Maybe you could share it with my viewers.
Sure. I believe that doctrinally, when it comes to the dogmas of the Church, the core teachings of the Church, there will not be any change. However, regarding disciplines of the Church, there is a possibility of change. Now, whether that will happen or not, I don't know. For example, you mentioned married clergy. That's a discipline of the Church. That's not a theological dogma of the Church. In the early years, priests were married. In the Greek Catholic Church, priests are married.
Yes.
Or can be married.
Well, if it works for one lung,
Why not the other? Yes. Yes. And I think that's something that could be explored.
I see.
Whether or not that will be by Pope Benedict XVI, I couldn't say.
You know, I'm an old finance professor, and I was thinking if they start permitting the priests to marry, they're going to have families to support. It's going to change the finances of the church, I think, quite a bit, wouldn't it?
Absolutely.
Living quarters and everything would be
Absolutely.
different.
But these are not insurmountable problems. These are all things that could be explored. Even in the Greek Catholic Church, where we have married priests, we are looking right now at salaries. Is it right to pay a single man and a married man the same amount? The married man has obligations to families.
Well, a single man maybe lives in a monastic setting.
Mm.
You mentioned something about monasteries before we came on the air. I'd like you to address that. Because
yes, monasteries are different. Monastic clergy is different from what we would term diocesan clergy. Diocesan clergy, priest like myself who works within the diocese, does not take the vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience as do the monastic clergy. Monastic clergy normally are vowed to stay, or often vowed to stay within a certain monastery for the rest of their lives.
do they don't preach to a congregation the same
And then
way?
often do not preach to congregations.
It's a different calling.
Different calling, although some certainly do.
I see.
Some actually come out and teach as well. All of those things would have to be diocesan clergy. Then monastic clergy could not be married but the diocesan clergy could be married. But that would, again, as you quite correctly state, we'd have to look at a lot of economics and practices, health care,
I
health
can
benefits,
see. Oh yes,
all these things.
all kinds of things.
Not insurmountable, but something that would have to be looked at.
They tell me that we need to pause for another
Okay.
public service announcement. So stay with us, and we will be right back. Welcome back. We are here with the Right Reverend Alexi Smith, who is the Ecumenical and Interreligious Affairs Officer
Very good.
of the Los Angeles Archdiocese.
Bravo.
Full title. Alexi, it is such a joy to have you here, Father, and to find out more about the church. What impact has this new cathedral had on your archdiocese here?
It's a wonderful place now for people to come together. Our previous cathedral was not large. It was not nice in the sense that it wasn't, people didn't make...
Out of date?
I hate to use terms like out of
Oh,
date.
all right, I'm sorry.
But it was not an attractive place for people to come. Now people come from all over the Archdiocese, in fact all over the world, to come and to come there, to pray there. Thousands of people.
How many will it hold?
Seated or standing or both, about 3,000 people.
That's a pretty good sized church.
Very good size.
Yes.
And it has become a religious center for Los Angeles. Los Angeles, unique amongst the major cities of the world that did not have a religious center. Our old cathedral would never serve as the center of religious life in Los Angeles. This new one is.
And this gives you a whole new basis to work and to reach out and to bring people in and to have conferences.
Absolutely.
Do you have non-religious meetings in there sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. And we have our interreligious meetings there often.
That's what I was thinking.
We had the idea of an insurance cover the uninsured week, for example. We've sponsored a couple of conferences there on an interreligious basis on that theme.
You're getting into my territory when you talk finance and insurance and all that stuff. That's what I taught. Till I retired.
We also have been recently using the cathedral to foster the arts.
Oh, wonderful.
The Mormon Tabernacle Choir sang there recently.
Oh, yes.
Right now there's an art exhibit, Jewish art and Christian art, entitled the Passion and Passover, with the Passion of Christ.
Very
art pieces
good.
depicting the Passion of Christ, art depicting the Jewish feast of Passover.
If someone has any questions, my telephone number will appear at the end. They permit the producers to put their number.
I understand.
And if they contact me, may I call you and refer the questions?
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
You're the man. I want to thank you for being our guest
Thank you.
here
It's my
on
pleasure.
Adventures
An
in
honor.
Life. And I want to thank our viewing audience for joining us too. And please join us soon again for more Adventures in Life.
That's great.